This report is quite ranging. It makes a couple of recommendations, but I do wonder what's being said to the social media companies to try and make sure that they bring in these warnings on images that they have been doctored.
Well, good morning, Kamali. I mean, the truth is, as you say in that report, the world has changed very dramatically. And we now think that around 60% of 17 to 19-year-olds may have a possible eating disorder. So this is a very dramatic increase over the last couple of decades. And social media appears to be one of the causes. We call for some research to be done so that we can properly understand that. But at a very minimum, when commercial companies Photoshop images to make people look more thin than they would be in real life, we think that should be labelled. We think people looking at those images should know this is not a real human being. And that's part of the way that we can help people use social media with more awareness of some of the tricks of the trade, if you like, and therefore stop this focus on ever thinner bodies, which is so damaging to so many young people, particularly young women.
Yeah, I mean, you think that, Mr. Hunt, as you say, and I'm sure many of our viewers feel the same. It does beg the question of why is it taking so long to try and make sure that those kind of rules are brought into place? Is it an issue with regulation? Should there be legislation brought in? What's the hold-up? Because we've known about this for a while.
Well, in fairness, I think that MPs have been on the case for quite a while, and my colleague, Dr. Luke Evans, has been campaigning very hard on this in Parliament. And I think the social media landscape is in need of an overhaul in areas like this, particularly when it affects young people. But I think the most important thing is the message we're giving in this report is just not the case that there's nothing we can do about this. There's the doctored social media images. There's also the fact that you've got a lot of backstreet cowboys where you can just turn up and get non-surgical cosmetic procedures done to change the look of your face, the shape of your nose. And we say that shouldn't be something you can just turn up and get done on the spot. There should be a cooling off period. And in particular, there should be an obligation on whoever is conducting that procedure to look into your full history, including your mental health history, and talk about that with you, because it might be that this isn't actually anything to do with your look. It's just to do with mental health issues. And the thing to do is to look at the root cause of those problems, not to change the look of your face.
I mean, is there enough support then for people who feel like this? We know that we're going through a time of difficulty in funding social care and, of course, the NHS. Are there enough professionals working in this field that can actually address people's concerns?
Well, we do say that access to NHS services has not been as easy as it should be. And of course, that's the case across the board because of the post-COVID backlog and all sorts of other reasons. But I think our particular concern is actually that in some ways access is too easy for people who are feeling depressed or anxious about their body image. They can go and get these procedures done, on the spur of the moment without proper consideration. And then they find out that it hasn't actually solved the root problem, which was concern about their body image. And the other thing we say in the report, and this is, I think, a big change in terms of our overall way of thinking, is that when we look at school children, our focus to date has been very much on whether they are overweight. And we do have a very big issue with obesity. We're one of the fattest nations in Europe. But we need also to be looking at whether people are underweight. And so what we recommend is annual health and well-being checks for children in which people who are underweight are flagged just as much as people who are overweight.
OK, thank you for that, Jeremy Hunt. Let me move on, if I can, and ask you to put on your former Foreign Secretary hat for a moment. I just want you to react to the news we had coming in overnight of the drone strike that killed Ayman al-Zawahiri.
Well, no one's going to shed a tear for this very evil man. But what I would say is this also sends a very powerful signal to people who have tended to underestimate the strength of America and the West, and tended to say we're in decline and the future belongs to the Chinas and the Russias of this world. And I think what this shows is the technology at the disposal of the United States and its allies remains the most formidable of any in the world. And in the end, sometimes we take a while to get our act together, but in the end, the West will react when our values are under threat.
And do you think there are likely to be reprisals to this killing?
Well, you always run that risk. But in the end, I think what we've learned from what's happened in Ukraine is that sometimes weakness is a bigger provocation than strength. And our enemies, people who don't agree with our way of life, don't accept our values, need to understand that the West is going to be strong and resolute in the face of challenges to our way of life, which is open societies, respect for human rights, not marching into other countries, and not setting off terrorist bombs.
Now, this guy was killed in central Kabul. Does this just confirm for us that we can't trust what the Taliban say? They were not meant to be harbouring terrorists.
I'm afraid a lot of people will draw that inference, and I slightly draw that inference as well. I think that the withdrawal from Afghanistan was a very big low point for many, many reasons. But this was the most important thing of all. We were supposed to be negotiating that Afghanistan would not go back to being a harbour for terrorists. I think this indicates that we can't be sure that's not the case.